Mackie,
Tony.
uh, Backyardigans or Teletubbies?
Backyardigans. That Teletubbies are terrifying.
Did you
Have you
watch?
seen them before?
Well, yeah, Tinky Winky, Poe,
Nope.
Teletubbies. I don't know if they
You
were.
already lost me.
Backyardigans were good.
Backyardigans are good.
What about Wonder Pets?
Lenny, Tuck, and Ming Ming
Ming
too.
Ming too, or Wonder Pets. Okay, what about the Koala Brothers?
And we'll help you. Are they the Australian ones?
Yeah, they're here to help.
We're here to help. Yeah.
What when you babysit kids, because you do that sometimes? What are they watching? What are the kids watching these days?
The kids these days, they watch
I've heard of this
Bluey.
Bluey. I've heard of this
Bluey is
Bluey.
kind of the thing.
Have you watched Bluey?
I haven't, but I have like adult friends that enjoy watching it.
Do you know what is a Bluey, a person or a thing or an animal?
I think he's a dog.
Kind of like Blue's
With
Clues?
perhaps.
Okay. Have you ever seen the Paw Patrol?
No. But there's like
Apparently,
a movie about it.
I know,
Yeah.
and it looked kind of good, and that's where I wish that I could. Okay, this is the part you might have to edit out. I wish I could just find some random kid I could take. Probably not what we want to say. Somebody needs to give me a grandkid or something, and not like a grandkid. Like it would probably need to be mine.
It'd be nice if you had a grandkid that you could take to it.
Yeah, pretend I started.
You could have
with
said
that.
it like that. Yeah,
Yeah. Not like, yeah, I'm trolling the streets trying to find a kid I can take to a movie and buy candy. That's not good.
Nope.
Nope.
You could go by yourself.
Yeah, true. I've done that plenty of times.
Jake would go.
Jake would not go. I could barely get him to go to Barbie. I loved that movie. Okay.
Yeah, he hated that movie.
He did.
We'll actually bring up that movie at one point in this episode.
Will I get to say for the 900th time on your podcast, I am Kinough?
I actually, that's your challenge. You need
to
to
not say it.
No, to say it. I need you to find a spot to organically throw it in there.
Organically, that and the word rutabaga. Is that my challenge?
Yeah, you have those two words.
We're
not ending until you get both of those in. Okay.
Yes.
So, with that challenge set in place, welcome back to the Mind, the Mirror, and Me. I am your host, Mackie Overbay. And this is the podcast where I, a 23-year-old hairstylist, take on mental health, self-love, solitude, and more. And as usual, I am joined by licensed marriage and family therapist, Tony Overbay, who just so happens to be my dad.
Hello, Mackie.
Hello. Welcome. So in that brief kind of intro of what the podcast is, I mentioned taking on solitude. Right? Solitude. Which for anyone that doesn't know, because I truthfully did not actually really know what that word meant until we were starting the podcast and I was trying to put together some way to talk about loneliness in a not so negative way. Because I was like, I don't want to I'm like, who's very lonely. I didn't want to say that. So it's like
to enjoy solitude.
Yeah. So I was like, what's a way to say this? So solitude is the state of being alone or isolated from others, typically by choice, often for the purpose of reflection, relaxation, or finding inner peace. Solitude is different from loneliness, as it doesn't necessarily entail feelings of isolation or unhappiness. Instead, solitude can be a deliberate and positive experience, providing an opportunity for self-discovery, creativity, and personal growth. It's a state of being comfortable and content in one's own company, allowing for introspection and a break from the demands of social interaction. Okay? So, it's a positive thing.
Oh, Mackie, I did not know what we were talking about, and you told me that if I asked one more time, I would get fired. Is that true? You did say that, right?
After your third time of asking.
Okay, yes, which is fair.
I did maybe mention that.
I just pulled up something that fits into this so well that I didn't really realize where we were going today, and now I'm kind of giddy, so I want to hear everything you have to say about it, but the therapist in me has many things to say, all in a good way.
And I'm hoping you do, because we're talking about loneliness and solitude here this episode, and this is something that I am navigating and I'm trying to be more intentionally like leaning into solitude rather than just sitting around being lonely. But I'm very curious to hear your therapist stuff on it.
I have
because
so many.
I know there has to be so much. And I know that there have to be a lot of people that get lonely and deal with being lonely. I know I'm not the only one.
Let me plant like words and then I'll just step back because I want people to be hanging on, So there's a guy that I've had an opportunity to connect with, a gentleman named Ross Rosenberg, who wrote a book called The Human Magnet Syndrome that's about what he refers to as, in essence, these pathologically kind people that then find themselves in relationships with more narcissistic or emotionally immature people. And so it's almost because of this inability to sit with the discomfort of being with oneself that
Mm-hmm.
then they almost give up of themselves to then put themselves in unhealthy relationships. And it harkens back to like our deepest fears of being alone and
Yeah.
abandoned. And so we would almost rather interact with another human being or an entity, period, even if it's
Even
unhealthy.
if it's terrible and negative.
Yeah,
And yeah.
because I like at our core from childhood, here we go, is that then we almost feel like we don't exist if we're not interacting with another human. So we'll take
Yes.
any interaction. And Ross Rosenberg calls that, it's the self-love deficit disorder. And I'll talk about later, there's a whole pyramid of self-love deficit. And then he talks about this way to have this self-love abundance, which is the opposite of self-love deficit. And it is, honest to goodness, like becoming okay with this solitude and what you can learn
Mm-hmm.
from that. Oh, this is perfect, Mac.
Okay,
I'm
yeah. No,
excited
that's
for
I love
real.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so before we keep moving on, just throwing out the definition of lonely.
Okay.
So we have the comparison there. But the term lonely is an adjective used to describe the feeling of being alone or isolated, often accompanied by a sense of sadness or lack of companionship. When someone says they are lonely, they are expressing a state of emotional discomfort or unhappiness due to the absence of social interaction or meaningful connections with others. Loneliness can be a temporary or ongoing feeling, and it can vary in intensity from mild to severe. It's important to note that feeling lonely doesn't necessarily mean being physically alone. A person can feel lonely even in the presence of others if they do not feel emotionally connected or understood,
Mm,
which I think is big because I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who is single and doesn't have a crazy busy social life.
yeah,
So my loneliness like comes from there, but you can also be in a relationship and be feeling lonely. That is a
absolutely.
total valid thing. Everybody
Yeah.
feels this
Yeah.
at some point or another. And so then just in simpler words, loneliness is being alone and not liking it. It's a feeling. Solitude is being alone and content. It's a choice,
Mm, I like
which I
that.
like because
I like it a lot.
one's a little bit more of just almost an involuntary feeling that's going to happen, but there is this option to choose something and to make it not just this terrible, miserable thing.
Yeah.
So those are kind of our important terms for
I,
today's episode.
well, I like them because we've talked before on previous episodes about if we're talking about our relationship with our thoughts and good old mindfulness and meditation. Is that I love that you can notice that you are feeling lonely, and
Mm-hmm.
then move toward what do I do to achieve happiness in solitude. And then that
Exactly.
acceptance that we've talked about, that acceptance
Uh-huh.
doesn't mean that it's apathy. It doesn't mean, well, here we go. This is it for the rest of my life. But it's that acceptance that this is how I'm feeling and this is what I can do in this moment. And I can be present. And I mean, this
Yes.
is great.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And I also feel like I want to just note that because obviously now you can gather from the beginning here that I'm going to be encouraging solitude to some extent
Mm.
and saying that it's a good thing, but that's obviously not to say don't be in a relationship and don't have friends and don't be around people because those are all good important things. But I also want to highlight the kind of beauty of being content with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And being by yourself, and that it's not the end of the world if you're in a time where you are alone. So,
Mackie, this is the
intro.
way my mind works is I was thinking of, oh, it's like active solitude. And then I thought we could come up with an acronym. And then the first one that came to my mind was like active solitude solution, like AS. Oh, and I stopped.
There it is. Let's make a T-shirt.
Oh,
Let's throw it on.
no, it's
We
not.
can make a logo.
No, then we won't be able to get any kids to go with us to any movies.
Oh, no. That's so funny. We'll workshop that one a little.
Okay. But active
You're onto
solitude is
something.
good, but maybe not.
Active
Maybe that's
solitude.
it.
Maybe
Yeah.
something else after that.
Okay.
But yeah. So again, this is something that I experience often because I think for me, my 20s have been a lot lonelier than I thought 20s would be, which I don't know if that's for everyone or more, I don't know. But I think it's been this combination of because I moved away from my family, right, at
Hmm.
18, and I've been states away ever since. And then I jumped into my career at a
Hmm.
very young age.
The
I
circus. And
was
then when the circus didn't pan out, then you went to
uh-huh.
beauty
Then I
school.
then I went to hair school, and
Yeah.
then and then I was healing from an abusive, scary relationship at a
Mm.
very early age, and then my closest friends all happened to get married like within a year of each other,
Yeah.
and then I went through a faith transition,
Mhm.
and I also just have a very introverted personality, so You put all those things together, the 20s have been kind of lonely.
And awesome.
And that's the thing, though. That's what we're
I know.
making them
The
awesome, right?
dad, that's a dad in me that's,
Oh,
but
I know.
it's
You're like,
good,
but it's
Mackie.
good. You're
Right?
fine, right?
You're good.
No, but that's what we're going to talk about, that it's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. It is
It's
okay.
okay. Even though loneliness is a very uncomfortable feeling. But it is, I think, a feeling that everyone has experienced. And again, I think you
For
being a
sure.
therapist, I'm sure you might like this has to come up.
Mackie, it's so much of what you're saying, even with the way you just said that, it's uncomfortable. And we've talked about we are not wired to sit with discomfort, but that's one of the best
Hmm.
places for growth. And when people feel uncomfortable, I mean, I work in the world of addiction. People turn to unhealthy coping mechanisms because they feel uncomfortable. And so when we can really learn what we can do with that discomfort, that is 100% where growth can occur. But it's uncomfortable and we don't want it. So we're really good at getting rid of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, and I've talked to you about this before too, but I do feel like loneliness, out of all the feelings I've ever felt, loneliness is one of the harder ones to distract from or
Hmm.
just shove down. But the goal is actually not to distract from and shove down. So we will
Exactly.
talk about
Yeah.
that. There's an article on Psychology Today called
Mm,
How to
cool.
Turn Loneliness into Sweet Solitude. And it's from 2011. So get
Wow.
this, people have been lonely for a long time.
Since
It's not
even
just a new
then,
thing. Even when I was 11. But the author, her name is Tony Bernard.
is it spelled with an I?
Yeah, it could be
People,
Tawny.
no,
It
it's
could be
Tony, but
Tawny,
when
but it's
people, but
probably me.
I get people that will still spell mine with an I, and it is
Thanks.
something I notice. See, I was going to say it infuriates me, but that is a
Yeah.
choice that
It's
I would.
just something you
I
notice.
notice that it is something. It is a
That's
thing.
funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so she went in and did some research on the internet, even back then in 2011, and found some things and
You had to
just found
crank
some
it up
things.
though back in the day. You had a hand. The
Yeah,
internet had a
I
hand
can't
crank.
even imagine what that was like. But she said that these are just a couple of things that people said that they found to be like treasures of solitude. I love solitude because no one is making demands on me. When I'm alone, my senses are sharpened and I feel part of the rhythm of the universe.
Mm,
Solitude refreshes my spirit. I make my wisest decisions when I'm alone. So I feel like that's just, a handful of, okay, yeah, I can see that there's some good there, right?
yeah.
There's a few things. And then philosopher, which I've never heard of this guy and I don't know how to say his name, but maybe you have.
Okay.
Paul,
Hungries?
yep. Paul Tillich or Tillich.
Mm,
Any idea? I don't know.
no, but
Uh,
for listeners though, Paul Hungries is an inside joke, so that one
yeah.
probably came out of
Shoot,
nowhere.
shoot.
But that's
Yeah.
yeah, fair enough. Okay, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
Shout
That
out
would
Jake.
recommend that.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not sure. But first name's Paul. He said language has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone, and it has created the word solitude to express the glory of being alone.
Mm, okay.
So that's kind of cool, right? Glory of
Yeah.
being alone. So again, it can be a good thing. And I think that at least in my journey of trying to turn my loneliness into solitude, I think it really is a big just shifting perspective type of thing. You can just shift the perspective a little bit and it makes a huge difference and takes the devastation away from loneliness.
Yeah.
But I think also just because like the glory of being alone, like it can be a good thing. And I think that something I'm trying to figure out myself with loneliness and feeling lonely and being alone, being single, is that being alone does not take away from your worth
Yeah.
or your value. And it doesn't mean that anything is wrong with you, which I think is hard to not feel that way if you are having kind of a spiral of the lonelies.
Yeah.
But again, it does not take away from your worth. It is not something that is wrong with you. It's just a thing. Like it
Yeah.
really just it's just a thing and it's not permanent. And then I know like just hearing things that work for other people doesn't just fix it,
Yeah.
but we'll talk about more good things here. But then going to Buddha, we like Mr. Buddha.
We
He's
do.
got some
Yeah.
good stuff. One of his noble truths is that we suffer when we desire for circumstances over which we have no control to be other than they are,
Yeah.
which is kind of your act. Like
Yeah. It is. Sometimes
if
things
you,
they just are. Yeah.
yeah,
But
if
yeah.
we don't want it, it's gonna probably be there.
Yeah. If you're unwilling to
Um,
accept it, you will have it. If it's yeah.
exactly. So this author Tony, she then went on to create a list of her own things with solitude that she thinks are good. And she said, the quiet soothes my mind. Being alone heightens my power of observation. I notice details around me that I'd otherwise ignore, like the play of sunlight on the ceiling or leaves floating in the air on a breezy day. I'm more productive when I'm alone because I can follow a train of thought more easily, especially when I'm trying to write. Being alone allows me to let my body dictate the rhythm of the day, when to nap, when to eat, when to write or crochet. I can watch whatever I want on television. Yes.
I have a thought. It's so interesting. I love meditation, and I'm kind of, especially the last 3 or 4 months, I found a new meditation app, and I cannot tell you how much I really like it. But then I have a men's group, and I have a couple of people that will come in studio, and then it's an online group, and we've been trying to do just a tiny little meditation beforehand because so many people just
Okay.
don't do it, and I cannot do it when somebody else is in the room, and it's so interesting because I notice that is something that I just thrive in when I am doing it on my own, because if
Yeah.
somebody else is in the room, then I just worry. I still worry, even though I know I shouldn't and all those things, but about what this other person is thinking or doing. Are they watching? Are they not? And I've thought about that concept you just said recently. I feel like as if I never have before, of what are the things that I can do in solitude. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you know this, but I love writing. I write a lot, but
Yeah.
then I bought a privacy screen for my laptop screen, because I just, even if I'm sitting in bed and mom's beside me, and it's not
You
like I think
can't do
she's
it the
gonna.
same
I can't. I don't know if
if
you
you
know if
know
you
someone is
experience.
just there
Yeah.
watching or
Yeah. Do you
well,
experience anything like that?
this just makes me, which this wasn't even when I was going to bring up the Barbie movie, but
Uh huh.
let's go to the Barbie movie.
Oh, I think I know where you're going, and this is so
Yeah.
good. I've thought about this,
So,
Mac.
yeah. So I wanted to see the Barbie movie so bad that I somehow convinced my little scared, anxious self to go by myself
Yeah.
because I didn't have anyone to go with at that time. And so I I went by myself. I went to a
Yeah.
movie by myself and it was scary, but it was the best experience I've ever had in my whole life. And I then called you afterward and I was telling you
Yeah.
about it. And I told you that I didn't even notice that I did this. But in the past, whenever I've gone out and gone to a movie, if I'm with people, I actually end up spending like the entire movie just worried about everyone around me. And
Yeah.
the whole movie, I'm just like, Kate, do they like it? Are they bored? Are they having fun? Are they wishing we could leave?
Do
Are
they
they
want
going to
some
think this is so
popcorn, or do they
weird?
want
Literally, I'm like,
everything?
are they good? Are
Everything.
they comfortable? And I realized like kind of the people pleaser in me just kind of does that the whole time. But then I went to the Barbie movie by myself and I had the best movie experience I've ever had, not just because it was a good movie, but just because I was just there to enjoy the beauty of what the movie was and to
Yeah.
just be by myself, focused on the movie. And I didn't have to worry about anyone else around me. I didn't have to worry about what feelings I was having. Like there were parts that made me cry and I wasn't like my little brother's going to look at me crying and make fun of me, right? It was like
Yeah.
no, I'm here and I'm feeling things and yeah, no worry past that, which was amazing and only came because I was by myself.
And I
I would not have had that experience had I been
No, and after you
with
did
other
that,
people.
it's I because I love movies, they're my happy place, and I think I had
Yeah.
shared with you that when I went to college, there was a dollar
Yeah.
theater. I went out at Manhattan, Kansas State. I was trying to play baseball. I'd had
Hmm.
some friends die. I had been run over by a boat, all the typical stories when people are
Just
starting in
normal
college.
thing.
And I remember I would go to every single movie every single week, and most of the
Uh-huh.
time it was by myself, and it would just,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I'm lost in that theater, and it was the one I
Yeah.
still to this day. So I've been to plenty on my own. And but then I never told you, after you talked about that Barbie experience, I was listening to a movie reviewer podcast, and he just happened to mention that he said how hard it was to get a seat or that sort of thing. And then he said when he goes, he has to sit. He likes to sit in the same area, and he said I always go by myself the first time so that I can take it in exactly how you said. And I thought that
Mhm.
was really neat because he didn't want to have to worry about anything else.
Okay, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Which so if you've never been to a movie by yourself, I highly recommend
Pretend
it.
pretend you're a reviewer, right? You have
Sure.
to
If that's yeah, if that's and the
bring a
reality is
notepad.
nobody actually knows that you're there alone and nobody cares. So,
Yeah, nobody
just
cares
go, yeah,
exactly.
nobody cares. So just go and experience it. I had a friend tell me just the other day that they went and saw a movie by themselves because their partner was busy. Said it
Mhm.
was the most amazing experience. I was like, "See?
Yeah.
It's really cool."
Yeah.
So, highly recommend it. But I think, with that, it's still, yes, there are amazing things like that, but it's still normal, I think, to be, if you are single or you don't have a ton of friends or your partner's away or busy or whatever it is, it's so normal to still crave affection and attention and
Absolutely.
just want to be around people. Like, I think for me, the hardest part about being single, or honestly, the only hard part about being single really,
Mhm.
is just like if I get home and I've had a really busy day or a really hard day and there's nobody there for like talk to you about it, right? There's
Yeah,
nobody there,
yeah,
just nobody to hug when I get home and be like,
yeah,
I just had a crappy day. And so that part doesn't just magically become nothing
yeah.
when leaning into kind of solitude. Because I think as human, I feel like we weren't designed to just be alone
Mm.
personally. And like I've been working on just trying to kind of make space for that, let myself feel. But anyways, the author in this article kind of hits on that, and says, I still get lonely on occasion and long for company of others. When Tillich's pain of being alone overtakes me, I don't resist it. Resistance just makes the loneliness harder to bear. Instead, I direct compassion at myself, sometimes repeating a phrase such as, it's hard to be alone when you want to be with people, or it's tough to feel like you're missing all the fun. Cultivating self compassion softens the loneliness and makes it bearable. And then I remind myself that the pain of loneliness, like all mental states, comes and goes. It's painful now, but if I'm patient, it will pass and the sweetness of solitude will take its place. Which I
Mm.
really like because again, I when I am feeling lonely, I do just try to distract myself or shove it down or
Yeah.
get away from the feeling in any way, and then it does typically just make it worse. And
Yeah.
so I like this idea of not resisting it and actually allowing yourself to feel it again, even though it's uncomfy, but approaching it with kindness and compassion, and then just the concept of letting it be
Yeah.
and just letting it be a feeling, letting it be thoughts, but ultimately being kind to yourself and reminding yourself, like I was saying earlier, that there is nothing wrong with you
Mm.
and it doesn't mean anything bad about you or towards you. And then just the reminder that it's a privilege to be able to feel things just in general, both
Yeah.
good and bad, uncomfy and not, which, so it's like, hey, and again, I just read that for the first time not too long ago. So I feel like I haven't had a chance to really try this yet. Like, try not resisting it and try just feeling it. So for all I know, it'll be so scary and so uncomfortable, but I'm almost like excited to try to feel that and be okay. Because I think that the way you like phrases all of that just makes it seem like you can
Well, that's
feel
one of
it
the
and be okay.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things I think that I feel like I'm screaming in every podcast with every
Yeah.
client, but then they're saying, I still don't know what I need to do. How do I not feel that way? And that's where I just
Right.
say, oh, it's by not trying to not feel it. It's by noticing and accepting. And I feel it. I do feel it. Here's what it
Yeah.
feels like. Some people feel it in their chest. Some people feel it in their tummy. Some people feel it in their head. Some people feel it all over. And I notice it because one of the Genesis or origin stories of our feelings are that as a kid, I mean, we're having feelings and thoughts and emotions and they're there to warn us and to protect us. But even the best parent is continually saying, don't worry about it. Not now. It's not a big deal. They
You're
didn't mean it.
fine.
What
It's
did you
okay.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we're just conditioned over and over again to just stuff those feelings down. So part of, I think, what this concept is, you're an adult human being now and start letting yourself feel. And it is,
Right.
and it, you can feel and you can be scared and you can also be upset and angry, but then you can also feel joy and pain and all of the things instead of, I don't want to feel that. So I'm going to avoid everything I can because I don't want to have to feel that again. So this
Right.
is,
Where it's
yeah,
like, no, and again, feeling things it's an opportunity and it's a privilege and it's something that
yeah,
it's a cool thing that we get to do and it's what makes us human. Even again, that though it is uncomfortable some of the time, a lot of the time. But I
mm,
think, yeah, it's part of this life. I think there's no reason to go through your whole life just trying to shove everything down. And
no.
that includes loneliness. It's another feeling that just happens and it's okay to just let it be and it's okay to feel your feelings. It's good to feel your feelings.
Well, and I think this is what starts to then get into it's also your body trying to send you signals and warn
Hmm.
you. And so people that stay in bad relationships often are the ones that feel bad about feeling like they can't open up to their spouse or feeling bad about that maybe I'm the problem. So I just need to
Right.
continually work on this, whatever it is, even though it might be the fact that they're not able to feel the feelings or accept the feelings or listen to their feelings or go talk to
Yeah.
somebody about their feelings is part of the problem.
And so it's like, let's practice that. Let's try to
Yeah.
feel the things when we can. Because I do think it does. I think the more you feel your feelings, the more you do become accustomed to how your body does feel things. And then I think
Yeah.
it softens the blow of the really heavy ones a little because you kind of know how
Yeah.
to approach it. Or, okay, I've felt this before and I've survived it and I've been okay and
Yeah.
it didn't break me and it was just a feeling and it was temporary. So I feel like it almost is just practice. Like you get to practice. It's an opportunity to practice this feeling and to be
It
okay with
is.
it and to, survive another thing and turn it into something good even.
Yeah.
with this idea of solitude. So it's cool to feel your feelings. It's really
Yeah.
cool. But I was looking at some things, actually just went into chat GPT and just asked some questions about being
Like
lonely.
a
And
rutabagas, or do you ask it about things like that? Does that count?
for what that word was, that was pretty good,
I
actually.
know. I was sitting there
That's
thinking
probably
it's
the
going to be a
best you're
tough
going to
one.
get. Yeah. But
Yeah.
okay,
Or I was okay.
check
Here's
that
my
one
other
off.
part. Okay. Right. Check my other one. Then, and then back to you, Mackie. But it was going to be, hey, so I don't want to interrupt your flow. So the safe word today will be rutabaga. So whenever you say rutabaga, then I'll jump into the self love deficit and self love abundance. See, so there we go.
That was smart. That would have been so
Thank you.
smart because
But
that
I
could have
just did
just fit
that.
in very natural. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You just got in there twice.
Thank
Okay. So I just asked him some tips on how to deal with loneliness. And ChatGPT gave me a few, and I just picked a few that I liked. But this first one, I think you'll like it. But it's carve out time to let your mind wander,
you. Mhm.
which I think is interesting because it's almost like mindfulness, but not,
Yeah.
because you're not just bringing yourself back to your breath. You're letting your mind wander, and I think you're practicing being by yourself, right? You're practicing being comfortable with your own thoughts and with what's going on. And so I then cut this up in another website and whatever, and it was just, there was this whole formula of, okay, start with 5 minutes, like just do
Yeah.
5 minutes, let your mind do whatever it wants to do, and then stop there, and then just do this here and there and practice again to make yourself just more comfortable with being by yourself.
Oh wait, before you get
Yeah.
okay, first thing. So I do that. I call that one catch and release. I don't know why, but
Okay.
so then the release is just let my thoughts go, and then the catch is, and I'm not a fisherman, but apparently sometimes you catch a fish and then you let it go. And
Sometimes.
yeah, but so then I do that with my thoughts. So even when I'm doing mindfulness, that sometimes you will have a, there's different ones that I've done, different apps where sometimes they will say, okay, now just let your mind go wherever it wants to and do whatever it
Yeah.
wants to do. And I always like that part because then you gently bring yourself back to the present. So that part is really fun. And it is, I call it, yeah, catch and release.
Yeah.
Release those thoughts and feelings and catch them back, bring them back
Yeah,
in.
and because I think it's nice because it's not enough to make you start like spiraling or having
Mm-mm.
any crazy thoughts. It's just enough to practice it and to just be and just let your
Yeah.
brain do what it wants to
Check that
do.
out. There's a lot of check that out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which is actually very beneficial to getting to know yourself and
It
getting to
really
know the way your
is.
mind and your body work. So I think that's cool. Next thing, which this is when the Barbie movie was going to come in and I was going to tell the story that I already did, but it's
Okay.
to take yourself on dates,
Oh,
which I was
I
like,
like
that was
that.
kind of me taking myself on a date. And I haven't quite built up the courage to do the, like, go out and eat somewhere by yourself. But that's often a thing where it's like, go to your favorite restaurant by yourself and
Yeah.
eat because nobody cares,
You know what's
right?
funny
Nobody
about
actually
that?
cares.
Because when I used to travel a lot,
Hmm.
I loved going to a movie and dinner when I was out
Yeah.
and about. And that was in the days of these things called books. And so you would like bring a
Ah,
book and you would read the book
tell me
thing.
more.
Yeah. And, but then nowadays you can just go because you are enough.
There it is.
Thank you.
And goodbye. Thanks for
Yeah. Good
tuning
night, everybody.
in. But yeah, that's, and so it's a cool thing. And so that's when I need to get the courage and do it at some point. But that's a cool one. So yeah, take yourself on dates. You don't need another person. You don't need a
Mm.
group of friends. You can still do all the things you want to do. And then the next one was just to lean into all the perks. And it said, take up all the space, which I liked. Again, you can take up all the space when you're alone. You don't
Oh,
have
I see what you're
to
saying.
accommodate for
Okay.
anyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
don't, I got a queen bed. I could sleep on it however I want. I can
This
sleep
way,
on
the
any
one
side.
way. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah. Starfish around, spin around, anything I want. It's
Starfish. I
fine.
haven't heard that. That's funny.
But yeah, and then it just, when it is say learn new things and pick up new hobbies because you do then have this time to do cool things. Okay, and then I want to hit this from a more of a relationship point
Okay.
of view. But obviously, like I've said, I'm coming at this as somebody who is single and doesn't have a crazy social life. So I feel like I'm not the most qualified for this side of it. So this is where you got to step up, dude. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready.
But there's this article on Apple News called Don't Let Love Ruin Your Life. And I'm going to read this paragraph here. And it says, finding love is a beautiful, lucky thing. And some research suggests that shared time, at least up to a certain point, can make partners happier. But there's only so much time in a day, and the minutes you spend alone with your partner are minutes not spent deepening connections with friends and relatives or building new bonds, not spent relishing the pleasures of solitude or enjoying whatever interests are uniquely yours. If you build a life with your relationship at the center, everything else gets pushed to the perimeter. There's a way to maintain what I think of as love life balance, to preserve your identity and autonomy while nurturing a caring partnership. Losing that balance can be damaging for a person, for a relationship, and for society. Not only can your relationships with others suffer when you're too focused on your partner, so can your relationship with yourself. Some researchers refer to this as lack of self differentiation or
Mm.
a clear sense of who you are. More differentiated partners can support one another without losing sight of their own desires. But if you're not doing the activities you would do, seeing the people you would see, or pursuing the goals that you would if you were single, those untended parts of your life can start to wilt. Which I know it's slightly, I feel like there's a lot of tangents
No, it was good.
that could come
Yeah.
from this, but I just, I think that I like how it kind of circles back and brings up the benefits of solitude and being on your own and doing the things that are you and not getting lost in a
Yeah.
relationship. And so I feel like that's something you see and deal with. So I kind of want, I don't know, your take on it, anything that made you think of
I mean,
anything there.
I don't mean to say like all the things,
But yeah, but
but I just pulled up over on this other screen. I just ironically did two episodes, one on my virtual couch, one on my waking up to narcissism, all about differentiation,
okay,
because I
yeah.
feel because that is a concept. It's such a often used word in psychology, but I think it's also just lightly understood. And so for anybody that's watching this on YouTube, so I'm going to do something with my hands. And so this is where
Okay.
I always say that, like, we become kind of by nature, we're codependent and we're enmeshed. And so that's because of our fear of abandonment or our fear of being
Hmm.
alone. And so then we tend to get into relationships and we let some things slide because we think, you know what, it's probably not a big deal. Or, if he likes pro wrestling and I don't, but I like him and he says, do you like pro wrestling? I probably will. So I say, sure. Yeah, I do. And vice versa. So a lot of that kind of give and take. And then later on, if the relationship goes south, we often look at that as I overlooked red flags, or I turned red
Okay.
flags yellow.
Hmm.
So because then when you're codependent and you're in mesh, so that my hands are back together again, then you start
Hmm.
going through life and you're having experiences, and for the first time you have really different opinions on something. And then when you start to so differentiated is where now I separate my hands. It's where one person ends and the other begins. And so differentiation, is the opposite of codependent and enmeshment. You're interdependent and differentiated. But in the middle, I always say there's a lot of invalidation, and that's the scary part. And that invalidation makes us feel uncomfortable. So we often jump back into that codependency or enmeshment, if that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
And so then we often give up ourselves because we don't want to offend the other person because they may want to leave. And I think this is that part where the thing that brings us together is that I'm sure it's not a big deal, or he probably didn't mean that, or it'll be different when we're married or when we have kids or when we start making money, or I'll be happy later. And then, so sometimes I call it the crapshoot theory, because you just don't know what you don't
Uh-huh.
know. And then you're going through
Right.
life and then you are two completely different human beings. So of course you're going to have different experiences. So I love that what we talked about is by embracing solitude, and you learn to discover who you are and what you like, because you're not trying to manage or caretake somebody else's emotions.
Right.
Then the theory is you come into a relationship now with a little bit more of this confidence. And so then if somebody says, I want to go do this thing, if you really don't, then you say, man, tell me why you enjoy that thing. And then it's like, oh, I think I'll pass, but I want to hear all about it, versus okay, even if I'm scared or I don't
Yeah.
want to
And
do
then
it,
there's
or
no fear of they're going to leave me or they're going to
no, or
like
if they
think
do, that
differently
means,
of me.
yeah, or if they
Yeah.
do, that's a them problem. So with
Right.
differentiation, I pulled up a quote from here's arrogance, quoting myself from my podcast, Mackie.
Okay.
But this is from the transcript, that it's differentiation doesn't mean you don't care about other people's feelings or thoughts. It just means that you can tell the difference between theirs and your own. And it's about balancing your individuality with your connection to others. And it means recognizing what emotions and thoughts are truly yours versus which ones you feel because of somebody else's influence, manipulation, emotional immaturity, or expectations. So like if somebody comes up and says, man, I'm so frustrated right now and I can't believe that you didn't remember my birthday, I'll make that one up. Then it's okay. That makes me feel bad. And why am I feeling bad? Well, yeah, I forgot their birthday, but that's, and I own it. Yeah, my bad. I forgot it. Man, I really can't believe you didn't. I mean, that really, I worry that you'll never remember anything and whatever. And it's like, I just forgot your birthday. So now this is an opportunity for me to write it down in a little book or something. But when you start projecting things out to the future, that's kind of a you issue, because I'm
Wow. Yeah.
confident that I can learn things and I can grow. And so I appreciate that. But the fact that
Hmm.
you're kind of going on and on, that's a you issue. So
Right.
differentiation is learning that I can maintain a relationship with this person and I don't have to break down their reality and I don't even really have to defend myself. And so
Yeah,
you
and you
start to
can still
recognize,
just
yeah,
be your
just be. Yeah, my
and
bad.
be an individual person, and that's what I think, which again, correct me if I'm wrong here from a relationship standpoint, but I feel like with this type of thing, if you aren't really your own person in the relationship, and you do just do you become this very meshed together, like
Yeah,
just this we, I feel like then it is the thing where then say your partner has to leave for a work thing or something, and
yeah,
they're gone for a while, and that then you are left feeling like empty, and you don't know what to do with yourself, and you don't know, like I feel like I've seen this
absolutely.
with friends, with clients, where they end up then feeling so lonely and so alone, when really it's like, no, this is an opportunity for you to like
Yeah.
to be and do the things that you like to do, but they are so connected there, or
Which,
not even
no, it's the
connected,
right word, but
dependent, but
dependent.
like
Yeah,
dependent on this other person, that then when they do experience any moment where they're not with that person, it is the end of the world, and it
yeah,
genuinely is like, I don't know how to function. And so it's, I feel like there's a way to again, like I said, this love life balance, where there's a way to still be you and be okay when you're on your own
yeah.
while still being connected, right?
Mackie, I just did a screen share. Is that working?
Yeah, this is, yeah, I can
How
see.
crazy is this, right? So look at this thing, and this is from this person Ross Rosenberg. That I really like his work, but this self love deficit disorder pyramid, and he talks about, and he's talking more about, in the world of narcissism, but I talk about, instead of narcissism, even we're talking about emotional immaturity. But
Yeah.
if you talk about attachment trauma, and it occurs when a child is raised, and we don't even have to call it a narcissistic parent, but if a child was raised to not necessarily feel loved or respected or cared for or safe, then love is conditional or judgmental, and that causes this core shame, and it's a belief of being fundamentally bad or flawed, and that leaves somebody feeling only good when they take care of others while ignoring themselves. So if you look at this, I know we'll put this maybe in show notes or something, but
Yeah.
this is so wild, because these are the phrases over here. I'm only as good as what I do or do not do for others. Like, people start to feel like they are a
Wow.
human doing, and that phrase
Right.
is so powerful, and which leads to these excruciating feelings of worthlessness and loneliness, and this pathological loneliness. I've done episodes on that, Mac, and that one hits, because
Yeah.
pathological loneliness, which then leads up to loneliness, ache, or withdrawal, subsides with drug of choice, narcissistic lover, or emotionally immature,
Mm-hmm.
which then leads to selfless, compulsive caretaker who habitually attempts to, and this is what feels sad. It's like controlling others into loving them. Like, I will do whatever I have to do to get somebody to love
Wow.
me at the cost of myself. Now we scroll down here, and this is what I was saying when I heard about today's topic. This is so good, because when you resolve that attachment trauma, you do the work, whether it's therapy or what it looks like to then recognize you are kin up.
Of course.
Maybe the wrong time to use it. But then it leads up to this core self love. I am lovable because I am. I don't have to work at being loved. And I think that's what you develop from solitude, and from finding
Yeah.
yourself, and from finding your career, and from finding your hobbies, and from, like, you find that through that, just being and doing. And then that
Right.
existential peace. Look what it says right here: comfortable in your own skin, the freedom to live as an imperfect but worthy and lovable person. And then I love this, the next up on this pyramid: mutually reciprocal relationships. So self love, self respect, and self care that engenders the same from others. So if somebody is not providing you with the mutually reciprocal care and love, then they can hit the bricks, right?
Right.
And then
Right.
up at the top of that, self love, abundance, serenity, and acceptance about one's place in the world. And that exudes confidence. And I feel like that's what then, if somebody is trying to control or manipulate you, it's like, well, who are you trying to tell me how
Right.
I'm supposed to think or feel?
Not even gonna make me think for a
No,
second.
no. So I think that the solitude is where you start to find all of this, the
Right.
foundation for self love and self care and self respect. So the topic that you're talking about today is kind of deep, right?
Yeah. No, and I love that. And I love the two pyramids. I feel like you can see how, like you can just see it laid out
For real, right?
how how that does happen, and how somebody does go down this negative
Hmm.
path there, and kind of loses themselves, where
Absolutely.
it does not have to be like that, and you
No.
can, like, solitude, I think, is just, it's a beautiful thing in and out of relationships,
Yeah.
just for humans in general. And that's great. I'm like kind of blown away by that,
I
that
know, Mac,
whole
and it's
thing.
funny
Like, that's
because
great.
it's why I love doing this podcast with you, honestly, because I know, whether it's as your dad or as a therapist, or,
Yeah.
but I'm not just saying it when I say that. I think, I mean, and your mom and I have been married forever. We got married super young, and now
Uh-huh.
I literally, when I say crapshoot theory,
Yeah.
it is a crap shoot, because
Yeah.
how is anyone going to really understand who they are when they don't know who they are, and now they're trying to
Right.
caretake someone else in a relationship? And
Right.
so it breaks my heart because I mean, I think I've worked with 1,600 couples now over the last 15 years as a couples therapist. And I just, it's so hard to see people that just look so good on the outside, but that are in
Mhm.
my office and they make lots of money and they have lots of kids and they seem successful, but then they're still arguing about what the other person thinks the other person should be doing or thinking or feeling.
Yeah.
And that, right. And that's where it just seems so immature. And you wanted to strip back and say, how about you just give each other a chance to just be and do and
Right.
be curious about each other's
Right.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Crazy.
man.
Crazy. But yeah, so I think solitude is really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's something that, again, in a relationship or out, it's so important to just spend time with yourself and to get to know who you are and spend time doing the things that you love and pursuing goals and dreams that you have and not letting anyone take away from that or
Yeah.
stop you from getting there. And then again, just working on self growth because I think you never stop growing as a
No.
person. And so it's really cool when you start to, because again, I'm just figuring this out, right? But it's really
Yeah.
cool when you start to lean into the self growth and you start to get to know who you are. And not only that, but start to love who you are. And it's so cool to come from a point if you don't feel like that to then get to a point where you start to
Mhm.
and to notice those changes and notice like okay wait I am a good person and I am worthy and I am like
Yeah.
lovable and there's nothing wrong with me in the sense of like just who I am and it's I don't know it's just it's a really cool thing but again going back to just if you are at a point where you feel alone in any sense of the word I think just to note that you don't have to just be lonely then. You don't have
Mhm.
to just sit there and feel lonely because I think within the practice of solitude, there
Mhm.
is this reflection and self-discovery and there's peace and quiet and there's creativity, inspiration, personal growth, inner peace, reduced social pressure, mindfulness, emotional stability and that list goes on and it's just it's not all bad
Mhm.
and really most of it is good.
Yeah.
Which is just interesting because again, it's not something that I think is looked at that way or phrased that way usually. Usually you hear lonely or alone and it's all bad, but
Yeah.
again, it's really not. And then I think going back to this just no feeling is final, knowing that being alone or feeling lonely is temporary. And so I think it's really cool to look as an opportunity because,
Yes.
which is hard to do, but because you don't know how long, like I just think there's life can change so quickly.
Yeah.
And for all you know, in a week, you're going to meet somebody and then
Yeah.
that's going to change your life in one way or another. And then all of a sudden, like I think of this for me, it's like I could meet someone anytime and then be married and have kids and not, it's like my life could change so quick where it'd be so easy to get to a point where then I'd be like, man, I wish I had just like 5 minutes to myself.
Oh,
Right.
that's funny.
And
Yeah. That's a really
I
funny
think that
point.
happens to a lot of people where it's like, this is not forever. And there
Yeah.
probably realistically, there will be a time in my life where I maybe think I could go for one of those days where it was just me. And so again, I think it's a way to look at it as an opportunity and then to take that time and utilize it. And whether that's doing something you love, like for me, then if I get in that headspace, I'm like, okay, then I'm gonna whip out my sketchbook and I'm gonna start
Mhm.
painting and I'm gonna play the piano more and I'm gonna
Mhm. Yeah.
watch the silly shows I like to watch or do just whatever the little silly things that you like to do. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, this is time that you get to do that.
Yeah,
And there's nothing
and
that's
the
gonna
more you
take you
do
away from
those
it.
no, and I like that because the more you do those things, the more that is what you like to do, and so when you show up in a
Yeah.
relationship, then "Hey, by the way, I'm bringing these things I like to do along with me," and if your
Right.
partner is not if that person is not curious about those things, that's
Yeah.
a part again, as you build this self-love abundance, then that is so much a them issue, and I am not gonna defend my love of the things I love, because
Yeah.
if you're not if the person I'm trying to get in a relationship with is not wanting to just know more and discover more about me. If they're trying to control
Right.
me, oh my gosh, Mac, love or control in an adult relationship, not both, one or the other, you know?
Right. And so it's like then you're just
Yeah.
approaching that in the perfect way to know exactly what's like, okay, no, we're not
Exactly.
doing this, or
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to give up my the little
No.
hobbies I have and the little
No.
things I like to do. And so then you can keep doing those things,
Yep. Yep.
which, yeah. But yeah, so I just feel like if, again, if you are in a position where you are alone or feeling a little lonely right now, feel it,
Mhm.
embrace it. You can cry a little bit if you have to, but know that you have the power to turn your loneliness into something good, right? And that any of these feelings aren't forever. They're not forever and they can be good. So I have one more thing I'll read, but before I do that, do you have anything you want to add?
No,
Anything?
I just
Or do you feel like,
no,
yeah,
I feel like I wanna force one thing into the agenda because, quite
yeah,
frankly, I want to probably run this episode, as a bonus episode on my Waking Up to
okay, yeah,
Narcissism podcast, because
mm-hmm,
I think that you can be in a relationship, and you said at the beginning, and I think it was so well said, but you can feel this way in a relationship, and all of these things apply even if you're in a relationship and feeling lonely within it, because
mm-hmm,
when I talk about over on that in that world of narcissism and emotional immaturity, it's
yeah,
absolutely that you don't know what you don't know, and you have to learn. You have to understand there are things that one can do, but then just know that your default is still going to be, but I'm not doing them, and it's okay, because I think you can start to even dream and or hope, or you can start to, when you have a few minutes of solitude, then you can start to just even look at the things that you might enjoy. And so it's all this process. And to get all deep and nerdy, or the process of becoming is, we didn't know what we didn't know, and now we know, but we really don't do much about it. And that's one of the
mm-hmm,
hardest places to be, but the place that we're in the longest, because of our default is to just keep doing what we're doing. So you go from I didn't
yeah,
know what I didn't know to now I know, but I don't do very often, to then I do more than I don't. And eventually you become. And that process of becoming, you show up completely different, even in a relationship. And then that is either going to bring change in the relationship or give you the courage to do whatever you need to do that's best for you and maybe even your kids, or whatever that looks like in a
yeah,
relationship. Yeah. That's
yeah,
all I'm
and
saying.
yeah,
You take it home. Yeah.
okay, yeah, no, that's huge because yeah, it does. Even the things we're saying, this is what you do if you're alone or single or whatever. It's like, no, you can also do that in the relationship you're
Hmm.
in, and you can make changes now. It's you're not stuck. You're
Absolutely.
not stuck in any way. Okay, last thing I'm gonna read is just I actually literally saw this on TikTok last night.
Nice.
Just came up and I was like, this is the way to end it. Okay, it says, I think the thing that makes me the most emotional in life is the realization that everything I have and everything I see has been touched by other people. Someone designed the logo of my favorite tea bags, and someone decided which painting should go in the calendar hanging on my wall. Someone built the roof above my head, and someone paved the street outside my house. Someone made this pair of glasses specific for me. Someone picked the pair I ate with my lunch, and someone designed my favorite sweater. Every book I read, every song I listen to, every film I watch, tens, if not hundreds of people had to be there to make it happen. Even if I am alone, I am always surrounded by other human beings, a fact that makes my heart squeeze in on itself every time I remember it.
Ooh.
Mic drop. Isn't that
Oh,
deep? So even I
yeah.
know even if you feel alone, you're not alone at all. You're really not.
No, let me unscrew my mic and I can drop it. It's gonna take me a couple minutes though. Okay. Or
Everyone just
you need
hold
to.
on.
Hold on. I can drop this lavalier
Oh
mic
my
again though.
gosh.
I'll
Okay, yeah, do that.
it's it's a little pricey. I'm gonna set this thing down
Oh,
though.
okay. Gently set it down. Ready?
Okay. There you go. Thanks, Mackie.
Incredible. Okay, thanks for feeling feelings with us, and we'll talk soon.